Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be here. I know I've been introduced already, but just to say again, I'm Sarah Armstrong and I'm the Chief Executive at York CVS. And if you're wondering what those three little letters mean, I always think it's best to describe it with a photo. So this is a picture of just some of the team at the Priory Street Centre, where we are based in York. And we're really fortunate to have a tiny bit of outdoor space, which is in the middle of all our buildings. So we're very proud of this little spot. You may be thinking, that doesn't look so glamorous, but to us, it really is. Now, our three little letters stand for the Centre for Voluntary Service. We've got a really long local history. We've been around since 1939. Of course, I haven't, but York CVS has. And we're part of what I like to call a national family, which means there's usually a centre like us near to where people live right across England. It's usually three little letters. Sometimes they're three different letters. But what we do is provide support for three different letters, which is the VCS, the voluntary and community sector. Now, what that means here in York, for York CVS, is that we support around 1,000 organisations each and every year with a breadth of different things. So it could be that they hire a room from us in our conference centre. We deliver payroll services. We pay about 420 staff within the voluntary and community sector that need that support. They might need advice and guidance on a specific issue. A parent might have a child who wants to use our nursery facility. It's a whole breadth of different services, and we're very responsive as well. So if an organisation needs something from us, we absolutely do our best to say yes. Now, this type of support is lovingly given the title infrastructure, which does mean that breadth of activity and services. But in addition, we deliver some citywide services ourselves. So, for example, the Dementia Action Alliance work, we deliver York's only social prescribing service, and Health Watch York, amongst a number of other things. And these are under the heading of social action. And it's one of those phrases that people tend to know, sometimes use, but what does it really mean? And to me, very simply, it means doing good stuff. So if you recognise a need, if you have a good idea, you get on and you do it. That's what social action is, I think, in its simplest form. And social action is really important to us as an organisation. So it's not just what we are doing, but those 1,000 organisations and community groups, it's at the very heart of what they're doing. So it's a really important, fundamental part of our business that we deliver right across York. Now, because I tend to talk a lot about social action, I think that's why I was asked to speak today. So it's one of my things. So hopefully I'll be able to tell you a bit more about what that means. Now, I was given quite a small task to describe what is a strong and resilient community. And I've got about 8 minutes to do that. So I need to do two things. I need to be really fast and really succinct. And I'm going to absolutely do my best with that. Now, there are many, many different perspectives on this, and it depends where you live and what's happening where you live. And I just want to pull out a couple of the perspectives, because some of them are really important for York. So sometimes if you ask someone and say, so what is a strong and resilient community? They might say it's about being disaster ready. So being prepared for something that might happen. Or they might say it's the other side of that. It's about being resilient, being able to cope afterwards. And that's everything from a flu pandemic right through to the floods that we experienced here in York in December 2015. And some of our communities are still dealing with the aftermath of that. I also want to give you another example which kind of ties 2 bullet points together, which is about working together to resolve an issue and being a bit less dependent on local authority services. So what that might mean is where you live, if there's a bit of a litter issue, you get on and you do something about it. It also might mean if there's a neighbour that you haven't seen for quite some time, you knock on their door and you see how they're doing. Now, for those of you that don't know me very well, I like to get right back to simple things. And this is what lies behind some of these bullets. Doing things that we can do just because it's the right thing to do. So there are many lenses to look at when we think about what is a strong and resilient community. Now, I like a good old-fashioned definition, and this one, I think, answers a big, complex question like what is a strong, resilient community with a fairly simple answer. So what this does is it gives us a bit of a starting point. Now, the Carnegie UK Trust in 2011 identified those 4 characteristics as activities, things that happen in communities that actually show that communities are developing and working towards sustaining resilience. And what I really like about these 4 is I see this all the time in York, and I experience it, and the 1,000 groups that we work with tell us stories about it and what it means to them. This is a great part of York CVS's work because we get to hear what those groups, organisations are doing under those particular headings. So, the next big question is that your experience? So if you know York, if you live, work and visit here, is that your experience? Is that what it's like for you? And I think it leads you to that question, which is, does York really have resilience then? Maybe it does. We're often held up as an example of having a big yes to the answer of that question. But however convincing you think I might be, I don't know if you think I am convincing, but if you think I am convincing, you probably don't just want to take my word for it. And we're back to the scorecard. Do you see what I did there? Slipped that in quite nicely. I took my instruction well. So there are positive national indicators where locations like York are measured, are benchmarked against other locations that tell us that York is a great place to live, work and visit. And that health and well-being one is really, really important because here in York, being in that top 25% of places that do well here isn't quite enough, I don't think. But what is enough is residents tell us. Over 80% of residents, 4 out of 5, say, I feel healthy and I feel well. And that's really important, I think. So there are some hard indicators to back that up. What also backs that up is what I like to call the ooh factor. Now, I've worked nationally, I've worked all over the place, and as soon as you mention a place like York, people go, ooh, York. And they look kind of nostalgic, a little bit dreamy. It has that effect, that one small, short word has people having a bit of a knee tremble. And then they say things like, oh, Betty's, the Minster, the races. And you kind of say, yes, absolutely. So York definitely has that factor. That's what people absolutely know us for. So it is recognised as a great place to live, work and visit. And as a champion of the voluntary and community sector, of course I'm going to tell you we've got a thriving sector. And we absolutely have here in York. Are they doing more than they've ever done? Absolutely. But the stuff that they're doing is really, really important. And I just want to focus on volunteering for just a moment. Now, in 2010, the university at Teesside did a study into what was called the state of the sector, the voluntary and community sector. And they produced a report afterwards that gives you a really good indication of what they learned by undertaking that activity. So it was called a thriving third sector. And they estimated, as a minimum, that there was around £83 million worth of what they call work time to the local economy contributed by volunteers across York and North Yorkshire. And they said that that was probably an underestimation. So we have a powerful, demonstrated commitment to volunteering that doesn't quite just happen. There's a lot of support provided to volunteers, but it's often unrecognised, and often unrecognised with a monetary value. And I think it's really important to be able to say what that contribution is. Now, I'm very fortunate to work with a really engaged local authority, and one of the pleasures of working nationally is you work with loads of local authorities, and I really like York, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but it's really important to have a local authority who are forward-thinking, and York want to help people to do more for themselves. Now, if you're feeling cynical, you might think, well, that's about money. And it may have started being about money, but fundamentally, I believe the best people to make decisions in their own communities are the people who live there, because they know it best. So it's not rocket science to me, and that's why I want to be able to promote more independence in communities, so where you live, you can make those decisions for yourself. And I work closely with our local authority colleagues because that's their motivation as well. And there's a real sense of working together culture here in York. I think that's probably because I'm very good at knocking on people's doors and saying, please, can you help me? And they say, oh, okay, I'll help you. And we work together. Now, fundamentally for me, that's because I believe you can do a lot as an individual, but you can do much more as a group, as a collective. So you find friends to work with. And fortunately, here in York, we have a strong working together culture. Now, I'm hoping that you're coming to the workshops later. This won't be the first time I mention this, I'm sure. And that will give you an example of groups working together who don't always come together. But why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we work together and learn and share and work well together? Because we absolutely can do more. And we've got really strong links to other places and communities here in York. We do two things really well. We do tell others about what we're doing. We don't do it enough. We are a bit shy. From today on, I promise you I will be less shy. And we hear from, for those of you who know me, you'll be like, you don't need to be that at all. And we do learn from others. So if there's good stuff happening in other places, my goodness, do we want to get a head start on that and learn about that? So now you've heard all of that, do you think it's time to relax, put our feet up, kick off our shoes and have a cup of tea? Because clearly York's got the ooh factor, it's got some national indicators, some evidence behind it, thriving voluntary and community sector. Is our work done? No, of course it's not. There's plenty more to do. So, what I think there is to do happens in two places. It kind of happens on the ground in local places where people live, and it happens in places like this and in offices and environments like that. So I want to think about this in two ways. Now, on the ground, I think you can never have enough social action. If somebody's got a good idea to improve something locally, they need to be able to get on and do that and have some support to do it if they need it, or just do it. I think we need to not only grow volunteering, but we need to recognise volunteering. And if you do come to one of the workshops later, you'll hear much more about this. And I heard a phrase very recently, which I've kind of fallen in love with a bit, which is about prescribing optimism. And because we deliver York's only social prescribing service, this kind of hit a place in me where it might not have landed in the same place as you, but wouldn't it be amazing to be able to prescribe optimism, to give people hope, and to say, do you know what, if you've got a good idea in your community, of course you can do it. What do you need? How can we help? I like the idea, and especially after recent events, that we can prescribe hope. There are still things that we can absolutely do to make communities stronger and more resilient. And you'll hear later on, and not just today, but on an ongoing basis, about a simple phrase called people helping people. And we can all do that. It's just lending a hand to do some of the stuff that I've just mentioned. Now, in our offices, we have an abundance of strategies. There's a lot of strategies. And one of the things that I'm on a mission to do is to align those strategies and to try and see if A, we can use them to make sense of the work that we do, and B, if we can just help others understand them a bit more. And the bit that's really important is strategies are usually about improving things for people. The very people that they are improving things for need to be involved in the strategies, in the development and the delivery. And high-level strategies and events like today prove it, where there's a lot to think about and a lot to do. We need to work together to do it. And when we get it right, we need to share in the success of doing that. So you have some homework. Have you got a pen? Or you memorise these three? The first thing is, we need to talk about this stuff more. There's a ton of stuff to do. We can't just put our feet up and relax. There's a lot to do. But the thing that I think always makes it easier is you start with a conversation and you just talk more about this. The second bit is to celebrate what we do well. I think we're always focused on the next thing that we have to do. Sometimes we just need to pause and say, ooh, that was great. We did that. We need to do a bit more of that. And where there's good stuff, we grow it. So that would be my suggested homework for you. If you'd like to talk about this later, I may have mentioned the workshops once or twice. I will be with some colleagues later on talking about how to build strong and resilient communities. But if you don't get the opportunity to come to the workshop or talk today, then pop in to us at Priory Street Centre or get in touch, and I'll only now say thank you very much for listening. Thank you.